Welcome to the latest word on Black News with Brittany Jones, bringing you powerful conversations.
Black history is American history. American history is Black history. You don't study the history of America like history is a public relations exercise.
Exclusive stories.
That Black women in slavery, it's kind of like our bodies have never been our own. So you start to hear these stories, and these were stories about young women. They were not adults that was brutally raped.
Thought-provoking topics.
It's the voice of Black America right now, and it feels more like a choir than a preacher. And it's a choir that's singing on different notes, not a choir that's singing in harmony.
And transformative perspectives.
I have learned so much about myself.
Haven't we all? That inform, inspire, and ignite change. You're watching the latest word on Black News.
We need to make a commitment that we will learn African American history the way I learned African American history when I was a child. I learned it in my home. I learned it in the church. I learned it in the community. I learned it from the books that my parents had on their shelves, whether it was Martin Luther King's books or Malcolm X's books or W.B. Du Bois's books, whether it was, going to Emancipation Day celebrations at Greater St. Stephen's Baptist Church in New Orleans, when I was a teenager. We have to make a commitment through our own institutions, through our churches, and we've got to hold our public schools accountable to tell history in a complete and thorough fashion. No community would stand for the elimination of their history or some control on the perspective. If the standard is, well, certain things make people feel bad, then I've felt bad since birth. Learning about the awful terror that was carried out, the system of segregation, the system of slavery. Look, my family emanates from the Whitney Plantation in Louisiana. That plantation today is now the Whitney Slavery Museum. My great-grandmother, Celeste Becknell, was an enslaved woman on that plantation. That plantation celebrates the contributions that my family made to the wealth of the Heidel family on that plantation for a very, very long time. It is crucial to understand that. And me and my family, we have been able to learn more about our family since John Cummings, Ibrahim Asek, and a number of people bought that plantation. John Cummings bought it, had a vision to create a slavery museum, connected with a Senegalese scholar by the name of Ibrahim Asek. And they went out to really, really document the life of every enslaved person that lived on that plantation, of which my family members were a part. So we have to celebrate, but also learn of the horror and the brutality that they experienced, on that plantation in an enslaved status for hundreds and hundreds of years. The standard should not be, does something make people feel bad? Does something make people feel, if that's the standard, wow, there's a lot of stuff that ought to be canceled that offends me or that makes me uncomfortable or makes people who have shared my life experiences.
And Mark, kind of put a bow on this for us, right? When you have these museums that exist to be able to tell those stories, and like you said, they can't even tell the full extent of the experience. But why is it so important to make sure these places stand tall?
Because for a long time, our history was erased, suppressed, twisted, not told. Told from a perspective of those that created the system of slavery, segregation, and oppression. Yeah. And they told it in an inauthentic way. Look, my fourth grade textbook told the story of slavery being a system where white Americans or white North Americans brought enslaved Africans here to civilize them. That the Native Americans, the indigenous community, they worship pagan gods and they needed to be Christianized. That was what my history book in the South, in New Orleans, in fourth grade said. I remember reading it distinctly. I remember it as being something that burned my inner soul. You know, as a fourth grader in a class where maybe 12 to 15% of the students were Black, one knew not how to express outrage at that. But I tucked it away. And when I got to high school and I got an opportunity to find my voice, when my high school teacher talked about the Civil War not being a war for slavery, but being a war for economics against Northern aggression, my hand went up and I challenged him because that's what my passion and my understanding of history required in that moment, to challenge false narratives. And I challenged that narrative that it was not a war of Northern aggression. It was not a war for economics, that slavery and economics were one and the same. I mean, we've got to understand that history and you know, if it makes people uncomfortable, get used to being uncomfortable with the truth. The truth is the truth. And this is not about, you know, just trying to shame or blame. It's about telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I think we have to recognize that you cannot heal unless you tell the truth. You cannot move forward unless history is told in an accurate fashion. And I think many Americans, many white Americans recognize that, not universally. Black Americans have to recognize it. And we have to realize that we do not, in and of on our own, understand or know the complete nature of our history. It's an evolution. We're always trying to learn because the stories have never been fully told.